Remember back when Notre Dame missed the playoffs and Pete Bavacqua said the relationship between the ACC and Notre Dame is permanently damaged? Well, ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips filled us in on the updates with his interview that he had with Brett McMurphy of On3. So Notre Dame's unique setup with independence in football, but a kind of a scheduling agreement they have with the ACC led them to being upset with the ACC this season with Duke and Miami, and we'll talk about some more of that stuff later on. But it led Pete Bavacqua to say, the relationship between the ACC and Notre Dame has been permanently damaged. Today, we'll break down Phillips' comments, why Notre Dame was frustrated with the ACC, and how the Big Ten stance of forcing them toward full membership or nothing is impactful in this whole thing right now. So let's get to the comments first. Jim Phillips, talking with Brett McMurphy, was asked about the whole Notre Dame situation and how things have been smoothed over since then. He said, quote, "We're in a really good place with Notre Dame, and a reconciliation is something that's important in my life and in others, and you're not always going to see eye to eye in every situation with everyone," Phillips said on Tuesday. "I really feel we handled it very professional and in a respectful manner." And another portion of the article, written about the interview, it was written that Pete and I got together, Phillips said. "We talked quite a bit, but we got together a week after the public discourse and had a great conversation. Since then, I've seen Pete and Father Bob and talk with them. It makes the relationship stronger to me when they go through some difficult periods. We all learned quite a bit." Now, that sounds rosy and nice and everything, that, oh, well, they're obviously getting together now. And the relationship between the ACC and Notre Dame is stronger than it's ever been before. But I'm not personally buying that all that much, right? I mean, you had Pete Bavacqua coming out here, and maybe Pete's just more of an emotional guy who kind of comes out and says stuff with some more fire. I don't know Pete Bavacqua personally. I don't talk to him on the phone or anything like that. But if this whole situation is as bad as Notre Dame let it on to be, it doesn't sound like just two people not seeing eye to eye, and maybe they had some public discourse and were able to stow it away in about a week or anything like that. You can forgive, but just because you forgive does not mean you forget and try to take course going forward in your life and whatever you're trying to protect out there. And obviously, Pete Bavacqua and their administration is trying to protect the Notre Dame brand. Now, Notre Dame was obviously upset with the ACC for multiple different things. The biggest one was they had perceived favoritism toward Miami to be making the playoffs. Miami was out there. The team that was most likely going to, or the team that Miami was the team that played Notre Dame, and they were the team that they were showing that game on repeat of. If you go back to that whole situation, the ACC social media accounts were even posting graphics comparing the resumes of Notre Dame and Miami in those situations, and Notre Dame wasn't very happy with it. They also have not been very happy with the ACC. This wasn't necessarily after the college football playoffs or anything like that, but they have not been happy with the ACC because they've wanted bigger matchups. And while they did get some of what they wanted, they need some of these bigger matchups to happen for their TV contract because Notre Dame is not in a TV contract where they just get paid the same amount every single year, similar to how some Big Ten teams do. They do have their viewership looked at and what they are able to bring to the table of NBC and everything else. And when you are only playing 5 of 17 ACC teams, and the ACC really only has one or two major contenders. I mean, Miami this season was a major contender, and that was about it. I mean, Pitt looked okay for a portion of it. Virginia, they could have been a playoff team, possibly Georgia Tech, but really the only team you had in that conference, at least without the playoffs playing out, looked to be Miami. And so the thought process there of really you're this is the only team you have, and we just scheduled to play teams like Clemson and Florida State more often. It does. It is something that Notre Dame needs to think more about, especially when they have a TV contract that is their main source of revenue for them. But it does require them to play these big games with larger viewership, so that way they're able to make it out. And then also there were rumors out there that Notre Dame was not exactly thrilled with the strategic mismanagement of the conference with a team like Duke, who lost to a G5 team and in Tulane, and a team that did not have every single conference game count against their conference record, was able to make the ACC championship game, win it, and then be left out of the playoffs because a group of 5 team was ranked higher than them. And so the Notre Dame is overall looking at the conference, at least at that point in time, saying, yeah, things are not looking super well right here, right now. And I highly doubt that all of these things were just, all coalesced and all agreed upon, and, rainbows and roses, all after just one little conversation that Jim Phillips had with Pete Bavacqua. Sounds like this is much deeper about what was going on after the season, during the season, and concerns about the management and everything else of the ACC moving forward. There is a thought process out there that Notre Dame tested the waters with the Big Ten for a hybrid deal with the ACC, and we've talked about this before. This is something that could possibly happen because of the relationship that Notre Dame has with NBC and the relationship that the Big Ten has with NBC. And so, if these two groups got together, you could see something work together. But from what rumors and reports and things like that out there indicate, is that the Big Ten's response in all of this was a flat no. This is not happening. We are not going to get into a partial relationship with you, a partial scheduling agreement. If you want to join the Big Ten, you need to actually join the Big Ten. And for various reasons, the Big Ten would not budge on this. They want revenue equality. They don't want to have to pay Notre Dame a little bit. And they also don't want Notre Dame profiting off of the Big Ten, similar to like what I've talked about before, where the Big Ten doesn't want ESPN and other groups profiting off of their teams and them not profiting off of the other team. Also, conference unity. Either you're in, you're out. Don't either be here, don't be here. And then also, rivalry history. So are you actually coming here to be in the conference, or do you just want an excuse to play your rivals more often? Obviously, USC would not be very happy if they had a scheduling agreement with Notre Dame not happen, and then they all of a sudden get put on Notre Dame's schedule again for them to play a game later on in the season that doesn't actually count as a conference game. So all of these things work together for the Big Ten to not actually be all that interested in any type of scheduling agreement like what they have with the ACC. And right now, Notre Dame does want to try and get out there and do some more of these scheduling agreements, try to figure something out. There was a rumor out there that they've been trying to do something similar with the SEC ever since the SEC said, look, you can play one Power 4 out of conference game or Notre Dame out of conference. So the core philosophy here is that Tony Petitti, he has a vision for the Big Ten being elite, unified, and have no exceptions for anybody unless you're a full-time member. They want to have a massive TV deal. They want to have, at one point, they want to have automatic playoff bids. They want to have a recruiting boost, all of these things. And a team coming in and having, a partial membership does not reflect all of those things, especially when you have one group, at least one group in your conference going through a scheduling issue with that team because they're not a team in the conference and they don't want to play them later on in the season. And I know there's more into the USC Notre Dame stuff. We're not getting super deep into that in this whole thing, but it does highlight that the Big Ten and the Notre Dame are not really all that close to putting anything together. It does sound like Notre Dame is probably going to have to start losing out on major TV money and losing out on situations where they make the playoffs in order for this to happen. But doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon, as Notre Dame is still being able to schedule teams and they're out of conference. They are looking like they can schedule SEC teams out there as well. That's going to help them with their TV contract and making some of that stuff. And then also too, with the agreement that they're going to be in the playoffs, as long as they're a top 12 team, that's going to make things very beneficial for them as well. So was Notre Dame rejected by the Big Ten? Not necessarily. I think if Notre Dame came to them and said, we want to be a full member of the conference, I think the Big Ten would say yes, and they would be excited about that. But they don't want to play this game of back and forth of, well, we're going to have some scheduling stuff here, but not really here. And I think that's ultimately what led to Notre Dame saying, you know what? I don't really agree with the ACC, but we got to get the scheduling stuff figured out. Until we get something figured out with somebody else, or we figure out how to make our schedule better and more consistent, we're just going to stick it with the ACC here and keep having our scheduling agreement with playing teams like Florida State and Clemson more often work out there.